All right, good morning or good afternoon, whenever you should be watching this. I'm going to give you a very quick video to remind you of a few things that you need to know for today's discussion. Going to be talking about today, as you notice, we're going to be looking at the beginnings of civilization. So we've been talking about civilizations and the founding of civilizations in our class discussions thus far. We've talked about how those early civilizations began to develop and grow. We started talking about the origins. We talked about prehistory, and we started talking about the very first discoveries of hominids. We kind of expounded upon that conversation with our class content today. So nomadic people are now starting to live in small villages, small in size, but large in the number of people living in these densely populated places. So today we talk about how those civilizations begin to expand even further. Want to only do this in a few minutes, so please pay very close attention. And should you have any questions, you can ask me about them tomorrow in class. So when we talk about the first civilizations, I told you earlier when we looked at the presentation talking about Catalhook and Jericho. These are cities and civilizations that are being built up on top of hills, which add for protection. It also gives a lot of advantages to those who live within the walls that were built around the perimeter of these small villages. We talk about how the people living inside start to develop very complex societies. So today, I would like to add to your knowledge of that. Whenever you think about the perfect place to establish a village, understand there is not irrigation at this point. There's not a lot of running water. There is no electricity. You can X and X out indoor plumbing. All of these are things that we talked about already. So the first civilization are going to rise along major rivers. There are various reasons that this is going to be the case. Well, think about it. Rivers not only provide water, but further along the line, you're going to find that the river is a good mode of transportation. You will also think about the river being a source of food. You can fish in rivers, but not only that, what do all animals and life need in order to survive? Water. The river is going to be a meeting place for animals, which can make it easier to hunt. So creating a civilization or creating villages and cities along major water routes are going to be your best option. River valleys were also good for farming because it provided a lot of fertile farmland. There's something called silt. Silt, which is a combination of soil and tiny pebbles that come from the riverbed, which are going to be very good for farming. They provide a lot of nutrients and resources to help in creating rich soil, which enable crops to grow. So you're going to find that as the river waters ebb and flow, recede and expand, they're going to provide a lot of silt and rich, fertile soil and farmland that will enable life along these river valleys. Also bear in mind that good harvest means you have lots of crops. When you have more than enough of something that you need to survive, it is called surplus. A surplus of food is going to mean that you can store food for longer periods of time, but also whenever you have more food, you can have more people. So you're going to find villages grow, and now they're going to expand and grow beyond being a village, and they're now going to become cities. So now you have the rise of cities along these river valley civilizations. The first river valley civilizations include the Sumer, Egypt, the Indus River Valley civilization, and the Shang civilization. In a little while, you're going to do a map activity, and I would like for you to locate those areas on the map. Sumer, Egypt, Indus, and the Shang River Valley civilizations. The first civilizations in the Americas, including North and South America, were far different than the civilizations that developed in Africa and later in Asia, because they're not going to rise along waterways, but rather in mountainous regions like in Peru. You're going to find that people are learning in those areas how to farm and survive on mountainsides. They'll go down and they'll fill in swamps and make these areas better for farming. So a little different in the Americas than in the places that we're studying right now. Lands that were less suitable for farming provided some benefits as well. You have these very water-free grassland and dry areas called steppes. Steppes. These areas, as I said, are grassy grasslands. They're very dry, and they're used to herd cattle, sheep, goats, and other animals. So you're going to find ranchers, if you will, or herders who are able to benefit from this type of environment. The only difference with this is because there's not an abundance of water or grass, these farmers are going to have to often move and continue more of a nomadic lifestyle in order to continue for their herds to graze and for them to survive. So they're always in quest of new pasture. There are 7 major features of early civilizations that I need for you to be aware of. 7. Number 1, these civilizations are going to have organized governments. Number 2, they're going to develop complex religions. 3, we find the emergence of job specialization. 4, we will see the emergence of social classes. 5, we will see the rise of arts and architecture. 6, we will see the development and expansion of public works. 7, we will see the development of writing. You know that everything before writing is considered prehistory. Now we're going to see writing develop and take shape among these River Valley civilizations. What began as a council of elders and chiefs ruling over farming villages are now turning into a more complex central government that coordinated the production of several things. These new governments are going to coordinate the production of large amounts of food. They're going to coordinate building projects because you're going to need dikes, canals, and other things. They're going to issue laws. You've got to govern all of these new people that are now living in your cities. They're going to collect taxes, which did not necessarily always have to be paid for with money, but could be paid for with goods and supplies. They're going to also organize systems of defense. All of these are going to be the new jobs and the new responsibilities of our new cities. Initially, in our cities, there were priests who wielded a great amount of power, because religion, again, was a very important aspect and element of life. But in other places, you're going to find warrior kings that rise to power. Keep in mind, as I said before, elite warriors tended to wield power over other people in society. I kind of liken it to everybody being afraid of the bully, giving the bully what he or she wants. So they are going to be the person that has the greatest level of influence. Many rulers will come to possess both political and religious power. How are they going to do that, you might ask? Because if I am a king and I really want to get all of the people on my side, I already have a political foothold, but I want to make certain that I secure my right to rule another way. What do I tap into? What drives the actions and thoughts of most people, even in America today? Religion. You're going to claim religious power. How? You're going to say that the gods have given you your right to rule, that they have called from their holy heavens or wherever it is that they may exist, and they have given you the specific responsibility of leading the people. And then you're going to pass this power down to your sons. Sorry, ladies, daughters did not get to inherit, and especially political power. Women were not high on the totem pole at this point in life and society. So that's how you're going to gain both political and religious power and prominence in these ancient cities. Religion during this time was not monotheistic, mono meaning one, but rather polytheistic, poly meaning many. They served many different gods. We talked about animism being the spiritual practice of those early hominids. People tried to gain the favor of the gods, small g, plural, G-O-D-S, through ritual ceremonies, dances, prayers, and through singing various hymns. Hymn is another word for song. People began specializing in jobs at this time. No one tried to master every single job or task. But now you start to find skilled artisans. An artisan is a skilled craftsman or laborer. Skilled artisans are starting to emerge, and they're going to specialize or become the experts in a single craft or do a specific thing. And then other people will rely on you for your good or your service, and you now build power as well, but you also build business for yourself, and it becomes a very necessary part of survival. People also started to be ranked according to their jobs, and this also made it possible for the formation of social classes. Like we said before, as some people gain possessions and wealth, and they start to notice that other people do not have it, they start to exert influence and control over those who have less. So social classes are established. You're going to have people who are at the top, and ordinarily you're going to have people who are at the bottom. We'll talk about that hierarchy a little bit later, but you can probably guess who's going to be at the bottom. Children, and again, unfortunately, women. These are the people that made up most of the slave class of civilization, women and children. Why not men, you'd say? Well, most of the time, if you were a conquered people, the men were killed. Why? Because they were the warriors. They were the heads. If you're coming in and you're taking over an area, you want to eliminate anyone who may try to rise to power. So you destroy men and then take their women and children as slaves. Unfortunate side effect of history, young people. So now you have these cities. You have these organized elements. You're going to find that temples and palaces were probably among the most ornate, meaning beautifully decorated. And they're going to be the most beautifully constructed buildings. Powerful rulers often will also demand that cities have strong public works programs, such as providing irrigation, roads, bridges, and defensive walls. Even after writing is developed, not everyone knows how to do it. It's not a skill that's offered to everyone. The first style of writing was the use of the pictograph. Pictures and symbols, not letters necessarily. And scribes were specially trained in the art form of writing. And most of the time, the scribes were the only people who could read or write. It was not something that everyone could do. And this existed for several centuries. As civilization continued to develop, it is important to note here that there were often major shifts and changes that occurred as the physical environments changed and as people started to interact with other people. Physical environments change through natural disasters, changing landscapes as you grow and expand into other territories and places. And people start to interact with other people as you either conquer or become the conquered. You start to meet up with people from other regions and geographic locations, and they have their own ways of thinking, acting, and behaving. And all of these things start to blend. And we call this blending cultural diffusion, which is the spread of ideas, customs, and technologies from one people group to another people group. Cultural diffusion occurs through trade, migration, and warfare. As ancient rulers start to gain more power and control, they also start to gain more territory. And as they conquer other cities, it leads to the rise of the city-state, city-state, which is an expansion of a city as you may know it, and it includes a larger territory. And even as leaders conquer more cities and villages and territory, we start to see the rise of empires. An empire may be one leader's accumulation of many different states. So now as they have claimed all of this territory for themselves, again, we see complex governments emerge. I also put you now in remembrance to the fact that we have 3 questions that you need to be able to answer. What was life like in early times, and how did it change as civilization began to develop? How does culture and society shape government and law development in ancient civilizations? And what common lasting legacies do ancient civilizations leave for future civilizations? These are all things that you ought to now be able to answer in your notes. So take the next couple of minutes to do that. This video at some point will be posted on Edmodo for those of you who need to look at it again or refer to it at a later time. And I hope that it has been an informational time period for you. Thank you for this 17 minutes of your time. You may continue with your assignments.